Now, the program in the fellowship has definitely changed. The program in the book has never changed. Let's go to Roman numeral 20. Let's see how effective this thing used to be when the program in the book and the program in the fellowship were the same.
So while the internal difficulties of our adolescent period were being ironed out, public acceptance of AA grew by leaps and bounds. For this, there were two principal reasons: the large number of recoveries and reunited homes. Now, these made their impressions everywhere. Of alcoholics who came to AA and really tried, 50% got sober at once and remained that way. 25% sobered up after some relapses, and among the remainder, those who stayed on with AA showed improvement. Other thousands came to a few AA meetings, at first decided they didn't want the program, but great numbers of these, about 2 out of 3, began to return as time passed. If my math is correct, that's 75% of those people who came to AA in the early days and worked the program that's in the book stayed sober eventually. I don't know in my area, I don't know what it's like in your area, but we can't talk about 75%. We can't talk about 50%. We can't talk about 25%. I doubt if we could talk about 10%, truthfully. And the reason for that, I believe, is that the Fellowship of Alcoholics Anonymous got away from the program that's in the book called Alcoholics Anonymous, and that worked. And so what we're going to do this weekend, as Charlie said, we're going to talk about the fellowship that's in the program called Alcoholics Anonymous, and we're going to ask each and every one of you to go back to your groups and listen to the conversation that you hear around the tables and see how closely it tallies with the program that's in the book called Alcoholics Anonymous. And if it doesn't, we suggest you do something about it. That's our charge to you this weekend.
You know, a lot of we older members of Alcoholics Anonymous tend to blame this problem on the newcomer. The newcomer comes in here and they want to talk about the only thing they know to talk about. And too many of we older members have said, well, we can't identify with those people anymore, so we're just going to stay home. And we've abdicated our responsibility for Alcoholics Anonymous. We've turned it over to the sickest of the sickest, who are the newcomers. And then we stand back and say, look what they're doing to our AA. Now, I think that's our responsibility, to be sure that every newcomer that walks in the door, that we tell them that stuff you've learned, wherever you learned it, is probably good information, but that is not AA information. Here's AA information. And we start talking about the program of recovery in the book Alcoholics Anonymous. And we take them by the hand and we lead them through this program of recovery so they can have a spiritual awakening also. I think they call that sponsorship. And that's sorely, sorely lacking in AA today. But I think that's our responsibility. It's not the responsibility of the new people. It's the responsibility of we older members. And we need to stand up and stand pat and insist that in our meetings we talk about alcoholism, recovery therefrom, the program in the book. And I'll just bet you we can see more people recover from alcoholism. Probably never will get back to 75%, but we can certainly do better than we're doing today. Now, we're not going to preach anymore. That's all the preaching for this entire weekend, I guarantee you.
Hope you don't believe that.
Now that we know a little bit about the history, let's go back to the table of contents. Let's look at it for just a moment, and let's see if we can't see the same pattern in this book that the first 100 used. Do all of you have one of these little folders like this? Okay, we're going to put a picture up here on this screen, and I know some of you will hardly be able to see it at all from its location, but you'll have a picture in that book which will match it if you can't see it.
You know, I'm in the printing business, and I have been all my life, and I print books like this. I've been in conversation with many people on how to lay out a book. And when I started reading this book, Alcoholics, and I guess I must have had brain damage or something, but it never dawned on me that this book was laid out in a particular way. After all, a bunch of old alcoholics wrote it, so what would they know about laying out a book, I thought, so I didn't pay attention to that. Come to find out, though, this book they've had lots of good information, lots of good help with laying out this book. This book is laid out in a particular manner to bring about certain ideas. Each chapter is very, very important. Each page is very, very important. Each paragraph is very, very important. One paragraph leads to the next. The information in that paragraph and that page leads to the next. And that's the way it goes in this book, Alcoholics Anonymous. Everything is important. And it's laid out in a certain sequence to bring about certain ideas. Most books have 3 particular goals, especially this one does. And the first goal in this book, it tells us what the problem is. That's the goal number 1. And they're going to use the doctor's opinion and build a story basically to tell us what the problem is. And then the second goal is going to be the solution. They're going to give us a solution to the problem they described. And they know we're going to have problems with that solution just like they did. So they're going to talk chapter 2, there is a solution. Chapter 3, more about alcoholism. The solution has to do with spiritual matters, and they know that we're going to have some of those problems. So they wrote down chapter 4 called We Agnostics for those of us who had problems in that area. And then the third goal is the actions necessary for recovery. And we're going to begin with how it works in chapter 5. And chapter 6 is into action. Chapter 7 is working with others. So this book is laid out in particular reasons to bring about certain ideas all the way across, all the way through the book. And that helped me in study the book.
I hear people today talking about going to a step study meeting. And they're always referring to studying the steps out of the 12 and 12. But if you'll notice that these chapters correspond with the steps also. And anytime you're studying the big book, you're studying the steps of Alcoholics Anonymous. In that doctor's opinion and Bill's story, we're going to see nearly all the information, a little bit of it in chapter 2 and 3, but most of it will be in the doctor's opinion and Bill's story. We'll be able to see everything that we need to in order to see what our problem really is. And we'll be able to see where we're absolutely powerless over alcohol and our lives have become unmanageable. And really that's step 1. Step 1, if we wanted to boil it down to just one word, would be powerless. Then when we can see that powerless condition, then obviously the answer to that's going to be power. And remember, Ebby told Bill it has to be the aid of a power greater than human power. So through chapters 2, 3, and 4, we're going to be able to see that power, and we're going to get some new information about